right, welcome everybody. I'm talking today with an OG in the space, Jagdeep Sidhu. He is the core developer of a project called Syscoin and also a foundation president, the foundation president there. And yeah, I'm really glad to catch up with you and talk to you about, well, technology, how it's evolving. I really want to touch on some of the zero knowledge stuff, but also just yeah, hear about what the hell Syscoin is, because a lot of people haven't heard of it, and it's been around for years. I think, I mean, it's one of these projects that when I read about it, I was like, wow, I don't know why I haven't heard more about it, because it is a really interesting project, being merge mined with Bitcoin, which is fascinating. For those that don't know, I mean, one of the first projects I knew of that was merge mining was Namecoin with Bitcoin. I don't know what's happened to those guys. They didn't really work, but yeah, welcome.
No, thanks for having me. It's great to catch up with someone such as yourself as well. It's been in the space for a long time.
Yeah, cheers. So tell us about yourself. When did you hear about crypto, and why did you what basically inspired you to get involved with, well, Syscoin and also some of the key challenges you faced in developing that platform?
Yeah, I think early on in the aspiring roots of Bitcoin, when we had the cyberfunks and we started to think about the concepts of digital cash, joining Bitcoin talk and talking about deflationary tokenomics and that sort of thing. It was purely from philosophical or intellectual interest that I wanted to get involved somehow, knowing that I'm in software engineering, I can help out in some way. So started to from the perspective of being just genuinely interested to starting to look for where I can get involved. I saw some governmental issues related to committing to Bitcoin itself. So I thought, it's best to tinker on the side somewhere else and see how we can. Bitcoin is Bitcoin, but there's going to be a space for a whole bunch of other stuff in terms of selling value and information, even digital identity and later smart contracts. And the only way to do that is really to try some other stuff, not for monetary gain, but for interest on what may work, what's not secure, what will work. Knowing we were ahead of the curve, that the corporate interest would come on top, it was just something that you want to get ahead of, and you want to be involved in something like that. Thinking, okay, well, the software development field outside of blockchain and potentially even AI is going to be a dying field compared to inside. You're like inside the circle versus outside. So not wanting to be excluded from the broader push for where we are going as humans, as developing technology on the hockey stick curve. It was a conscious decision to kind of go all in that direction. And that's kind of what led us to I started with Devcoin, which is one of the first, I think it was second or third coin after Bitcoin. And then it was also merge mined. So Namecoin and Devcoin merge mined. The concept was to give people who in the art of commons, they write or they distribute works that are genuinely interesting, it's theirs, and people would like to read. That art would be paid out based on shares, on how many shares are available per block. And it was kind of like a democratic process on how to divvy up the quality and the quantity of shares per output. But that's kind of the starting point of figuring out more than just money, but proof of kind of real work, right? And you have the proof of work behind it, but then the distribution of incomes based on some sort of real world work. So that got me more thinking in terms of alignment of real production of GDP in the future is going to be involved with settling on Bitcoin or Bitcoin-like system, but producing value on top that may not necessarily just be thought of as store value. And so this coin kind of came around, and they were doing some interesting concepts. It was a little bit kind of all over the place, do a little bit of this and that, but mostly focused on e-commerce and digital identity and things like that. Things like the core building blocks of business processes that we had, even still have. And that was interesting because, the way they were doing it was everything was on chain. We started there, we quickly kind of evolved that into move everything off chain and keep only assets on chain. But we did spend probably a couple of years figuring out, and when I joined, I just joined as a part of the community. So I was part of the community, started earning bounties, and I got more interested as I earned bounties, and I felt like this is a place where I can make a change. I guide the team here and build up a code base that stays very aligned with Bitcoin and close to Bitcoin. And then thinking about how even if Bitcoin were to want to pull requests and stuff in, it's backwards compatible. But just thinking about how we can add value in places that Bitcoin can't. So almost like the wish list of Bitcoin. Yeah. And that's kind of where it led off, and it's grown and grown and grown. And now it's kind of taking a life of its own almost.
That's great, isn't it? I mean, that's really what you want to get to that point, is where it takes on a life of its own. And for many projects, it does take years and years. I mean, even Bitcoin is still not fully mainstream, and look how long it's been around for.
Yeah.
I think if we look at the space, and you mentioned before how a lot of the motivations of people to get into the space has changed so much, or it's split at least. When I first found Bitcoin, a lot of the motivations, there was three main motivations at that stage. One was the anarcho-capitalist libertarian type who really just enjoyed wanting freedom in their money and saw this as like the digital gold. And then there was the technocrats who were like, this is crazy, look at the cryptography, wow, I want to find out more. There's also people that had both, obviously, in crossovers. And then there was obviously a small percentage that saw a little bit of like, wow, this thing went from $1 to $30. There's something here. And it did change a lot. I saw going through the conference circle when the conferences started happening that it was still that crowd, that early crowd. And then in about 2014, 15, you started getting bankers and regulators in and being championed, not only just coming in, but being championed like, oh, right now we have so-and-so from, I don't know, Chase Bank here. And everyone's like, yeah. And some of the...
all they're doing is they're hoping that, okay, a big institution is buying their bags on top of them. It's almost like a Ponzi. Until it becomes solving real world problems, it's almost like we're in early, and it's almost like a Ponzi because it's deflationary. And now Chase is buying our bag. Great, we're all going to be rich.
Yeah, exactly. But in terms of, I want to just touch a little bit on the scaling stuff, because I think that's also a motivation on what you guys have been engineering over at Syscoin, is almost like, and it's funny because I read when I read on the website, you mainly talk about a base layer, an L1, but being sort of merged by, I could almost see this as a layer 2, because you are, anchoring your security to Bitcoins, even though there's no sort of rewards, I guess. There's no rewards being sent to the Bitcoin network to sort of help prop it up. but still, it's kind of a layer 2. And I can understand people like Roger Ver, who were mainly focused on the business development side, who were sold on the idea of cheaper than MoneyGram, that fast transactions and cents to send, permissionless, all of these things. And while it's still permissionless, when businesses started, we started Voltoro.com, which was the first Bitcoin physical gold exchange in 2015, and the blocks were still empty, pretty much. I mean, not empty, but
the free transactions, the priority transactions, the first few that were free at the time.
Yeah, and blocks are interesting because everything will stay cheap up until the point where the block's full. So even if it's 99% full, it's still pretty cheap. And as soon as it kicks into that, now there's some people waiting, that's when the fee market starts to skyrocket everything. And I think people like Roger really were sold like, no, this is what it is. This is how it's going to work forever, not realizing, the block space thing is really a problem. And then they sort of go straight for the first solution. And then we had this massive war, which was crazy and horrible, because a lot of, for those that don't know and listening, a lot of developers that are like super smart in this space got so much shit slung at them. And, some really super smart people out there, the types, man, like they're so crazy smart that they have to, that their normal life is they can't cope with certain, they're still
not be able to be eye to eye with most people.
Yeah, exactly. Like they're very introverted and they just couldn't cope, and so they left even the industry because they got so much crap slung at them and stuff. And so where I'm going with this is that one thing I liked about the Ethereum space was that they sort of just embraced layer 2. They went, oh yeah, we need layer 2, and
until recently. I think before that they fell into the same trap as well. They just had more bandwidth to support getting to that spot, to having their own block size debates, and then figuring out, this doesn't work. What do we do? And they had side chains, they had Plasma. The difference between Ethereum is there's programmability built in, and so you had more options to try to achieve that scale. But still, they try to cram things up in that one layer. And they're like, we need side chains now. Like Bitcoin tried side chains with Blockstream, but with Ethereum, it's a little better because you have that Turing completeness. But it took even iterations on top of that to figure out, how do we actually move stuff off without losing security? Because even on Bitcoin, you go off the side chain, there's no guarantee you can come back. With Ethereum, because you can program that in, you can guarantee that you can come back. Not with Plasma, but with Optimistic or the ZK layer 2s, you can start to guarantee everything except liveness.
Yeah. The ZK stuff's super fascinating in terms of that, but I think now that yes, not in the very beginning, ETH didn't embrace it, but the community very quickly changed. It wasn't like Bitcoin who are very dogmatic in terms of change of their opinion, which is actually a good thing, because it meant the attack surface is a bit lower, because you got to get through these steadfast people that don't want much change, and good change still gets through, like Taproot and such, which is great. But what I found is a lot of the people that went across to like Bitcoin Cash and stuff, then later on saw that it made sense to have a layer 2, and is now sort of coming back again to understanding why.
Have you seen the article out today that's making headway in Bitcoin about using Bitcoin as a data availability layer for layer 2s on ETH?
Oh, really?
Yeah. So because of the Taproot thing, they're saying, why don't we forget NFTs? Let's use the data of Bitcoin as a data layer to serve as scaling up roll-ups on something else. So, I mean, I can go into why that you're degrading security, but it is from the concept of using Bitcoin block space, it's pretty cool. But I mean, if you want to do it properly, you do something like Syscoin and you merge mine it, and you don't use Bitcoin's block space, you use Syscoin's block space, but that block space is prunable. So because we can change our consensus without touching Bitcoin, we can actually make better systems. Yeah, like when so I have a feeling like the creation of Bitcoins is not the thing is, it may not even be human driven. It may be something that was put there. But I feel like we as humans are just too stupid to be able to say with certainty at this given time, when something such as the creation of Bitcoin was only a few years old, that we for certain know that it should be a monolithic system. And because the white paper says it's cash, we need to put everything on that layer and thus increase the block space. Because if you do that, now you have a fork, and the notion of money is supposed to be is never changing. Everyone can determine that I can trust that thing. It's never going to change. I can set it away and come back in 100 years. And so we're just not smart enough to see 5 steps ahead of, okay, what is coming? Like this crazy technology in front of us, it's going to build up a base. There's going to be a whole bunch of cool stuff on top. It's going to flower and blossom. We don't know what the flowering blossom is going to look like. It's going to reach for the sun, but we don't know what that path is going to take. All we know is we have this. And we have these people saying, no, let's cram it all up and change what it is. Let's cram everything in there. And let's just see where that goes. That's not how that would defeat the purpose of the creation of Bitcoin, and probably would have ruined the industry. Because when Ethereum came, they took those shortcuts and they said, you know what, Bitcoin's great, but we're going to take these shortcuts and go all in on this direction. So that left the market of what is the most decentralized, secure settlement layer out there, and that left the story of Bitcoin intact. Didn't need to change. And we still aren't smart enough to figure out which direction to go. But what we know is, if we take incremental steps and be open to change, the data analysis and the academics are proving out that modularity is how we're going to scale. You know, ultimately, these are all still stupid solutions, because when AI comes, it's going to rip and replace everything. But we know we can't get there until we have something that can survive ourselves. You know, if my thinking is, in order to avoid the 12 o'clock doomsday, we have to get better society. We have to be able to create a common sort of financial system that the base layer is one or two currencies, and it's not money, it's store of value. It's how, because if you have the separate systems, they're always going to compete for resources, and there's always going to be wars. In order to prevent that, you have to have a common base layer for financing, such that if one is trying to attack the other, they're going to negatively affect their own financial situation. And in the end, something else is going to rip and replace all of that, and it's going to make it way better, maybe quantum based or some sort of information processing that's way more efficient than what we have. But we need to be able to get through the next 30 or 20, 30 years without killing ourselves. In order to do that, we need systems that can scale without losing that decentralization property. So this is, for me, the parameterizations is 8 billion people, but time-wise, it's 20 to 30 years, because after that, it's kind of like a blur on what that future even looks like.
Fascinating. Yeah. Just I'll touch on a couple of things that you said there, you know, about people being too stupid, and it's money and nothing else. And I think this is the same trap we're falling in with CBDCs. They're like, oh, it's just money. But actually, it's a technology that can do a whole lot more, which is freaking scary, because it's centrally controlled, and they have full control over every cent or microcent of your spending habits and societal spending habits, and so that just simply because people think, oh, it's just money, but actually then you pile social credit scores and all this other stuff on, but mainstream don't even see that yet. They can't see those steps ahead. All they get told is it's real-time settlement, so yay, and they're like, oh, cool, it's just an upgrade to money, but it's not really money. It's taking the next step.
Without saying like a speculative, without taking a speculative direction, if you split those two paths and say CDBC is the way of the future and it's going to overtake the market cap of Bitcoin, and then the other path is CDBC is a stepping stone, towards people deciding that they're going to opt in into Bitcoin after that, and they're allowed to because of atomic swap or whatever. The path of CBDC overtaking Bitcoin is a status quo path that we will end up at doomsday before we know it, right? Because it's not fixing any situation. The inflation situation is not going to get fixed. The political games are still going to be worse. It's just going to make things faster towards doomsday. If it's 12:55, it's 11:55, it's going to be 12 o'clock before I know it. The other path where people can opt in is causing pain for the government's short term, but in the long term, it's actually fixing it because we're distributing all of that financing equally. And now the third world can join us, and now our GDPs all grow because we're all sharing that financialization. And if that's Bitcoin, maybe that's what it is, a store of value, but you're not going to be buying coffee with it. That doesn't make any sense. The notion of money could be many things. It doesn't need to be actually a CDBC. It could be something that's growing based on inflation, but it could be something that's algorithmic, built on top. And that's like some of the Bitcoin maxis don't really get that. They're all in on Bitcoin as money because of Lightning Networks. But if you look at Bitcoin itself, it can't support Lightning Networks as money either, because it doesn't have enough bandwidth to support all the court cases in case there's a large scale spam attack, which is almost free, forces everyone to go back to Bitcoin, and they will lose their money because you're saying, like the aforementioned spam, the fees go up. And so those microtransactions that would have cost 5,000 Satoshi to challenge on Bitcoin, now there's only 4,000 Satoshis in that channel. They're just going to let it go because it costs more to go back to the base chain to hear your case than it is to get that value. But that 4,000 Satoshi could be someone's life savings. So that's why the fact that, even if you take out the fact that you need some inflation targeting mechanism or inflation deflation built in for actual money to work, you probably it just technically will not scale to what money needs to be. And even if you forget humans, you think about like when bots and stuff are doing transfers of money for us, or IoT or smart cities things start getting involved, there's no way, like they will not be able to scale up. So you have to somehow think about a way where, okay, with the systems we have today, how can we break them up so that we could parameterize 7 to 8 billion people without having the situation where there's a large scale attack and everyone loses their money? Because that's what happened with Plasma on Ethereum. Even if you think Ethereum is super duper secure, the attack on Plasma was the people running Plasma could be centralized operators, but if they shut down, or even if it's a decentralized operation system, if it gets shut down, then there's a race towards going to the mainnet to get your money back. And after 7 days, that gets shut down, and then you lose your funds if you're not in there. So someone could just spam the blockchain to avoid you from getting that, and then they get this huge bounty. So those are the game things that we needed to play with, but you can solve that. But if you break things up modularity in modular fashion, especially with ZK, you can start to remove the computational aspects on the base layer, move it up somewhere else into your business domain. Like I am creating a multiverse or a metaverse app, and it becomes its own chain. I can focus all of my computational efforts on there, and I will pay only for my users. But I'm still settling back onto Bitcoin through either something like merge mining, or if this validity proof thing works out on Bitcoin, you can use actual Bitcoin. Although I wouldn't think that's the proper direction to go.
So tell us, let's talk about Syscoin for a bit, because I do want to know a little bit more about it. I know that it's been around a long time, but it sort of was, I don't know, it sort of slipped past me. I guess there's just so much happening in the space.
We've been quietly, we're really actually usually pretty quiet, because we kind of knew that during the block size debate, we knew that there was a long way to go before actual utility was going to come out of any of this. The only real story that was evident was store value, the anti-inflation, anti-Fed, gold, silver, that sort of thing. That still is the dominant utility. Like none of the DeFi stuff, maybe some NFT things are useful, but most of the utility cannot be unlocked until we scale. And so we're like, how are we going to scale this stuff? We knew that something like ZK was going to play a big part of this.
Yeah.
When in 2019, we saw the ZK white paper come out from Starkware, we kind of saw the writing on the wall that this is the direction. It's still I think a ZK future is still 5+ years where it actually scales more than what the optimistic future is. And there's a difference between those. And the optimistic future, you in every system you're running, you have to have one person that's watching it. That's all that is required. Just one honest person that can challenge your system to say, no, you did something bad. I'm going to challenge you and take a bounty. With the ZK, you're doing all of this mathematical calculation to prove out that the guy that's actually sequencing that system can do all these calculations and prove without a doubt that to the base chain that this state transition was calculated correctly. There's no challenge needed. That's obviously more desired, but it comes at the caveat of this overhead of ZK, which is still the economies of scale is still breaking down into GPUs, ASICs, and all that stuff, and also figuring out how to batch things up so you can parallelize. So me and you could be running the ZK proving on the same system independently and proving different parts of the transaction batches without ever conflicting with each other, and therefore we are 100% parallel to achieve proper scale. That will come in the future. So that's the optimistic and ZK thing. We thought this is the direction definitely the world's going to go into.
Yep.
We better have a position here. And then we started looking in that. We're like, okay, well, where does that leave us as a system? We were not willing to leave off of Bitcoin because we're like, that is the story of Bitcoin is 100% correct. You take the world's, you take the smartest people in the world who all say that if you want decentralization and security, why would you remake that? Tap into what's there. So we're like, we don't want to do counterparty or that sort of thing where we logically create colored coins on Bitcoin, because then you're stuck with the fee structure of Bitcoin, you're stuck with the inflation structure of Bitcoin. And we thought for utilities, you definitely need to think differently. You need to think about what happens when future generations of people or AI or more and more things need to use it. You need to have more abundance of tokens in the economy to support that case. It can't be up only deflation, if you know what I'm saying. So the EIP 1559 mechanism on Ethereum is pretty cool because it allows during times of demand, stuff gets deflationary, and then during times where it's not in demand, it starts to get inflationary. So it kind of balances out. And over the long run, it's inflationary. We'll be targeted around 1%. We thought, population growth is curving towards 1% or less. And so, the tokens should grow about 1% or less over time and just kind of gradually, not totally stepping down, but like very slowly, gradually going down. We got into that mindset of utility on top of Bitcoin, not in Bitcoin, but on top using merge mining. And then as we started getting out the roll-up philosophy out there, and we saw the roll-ups coming out on Ethereum, there was a big challenge because when you move competition off of Ethereum, great. But there's still a bottleneck there, and the bottleneck is related to people going in and out of that system to guarantee the security that you can always exit. Because you really are creating a side chain. It's just a glorified side chain, right? And there's a bridge in between that. There's Ethereum, then there's the bridge smart contract, and then there's your layer 2. So how do you guarantee that everyone can access the bridge to go back to Ethereum with their value? And the only way to do that is you don't want to recompute everyone because that defeats the purpose. You just store the data. You store the data of the transactions. In optimistic, you store all the full raw transactions with the signatures, just store it as raw data. It's much cheaper to store data than to put it in part of the memory that requires computation. It's literally just storing it on disk. So that's called the data availability problem. And that is, once you get into that philosophy of modular blockchains where you have the settlement layer and you have your bridges and you have your execution layers, that is the data availability problem. And that's what Ethereum is solving now with proto-dank sharding by Ethereum becoming basically a data layer. It's becoming like a sharded kind of database where people are storing data, and the data represents all the transactions that are happening off, but it's really cheap because data can be just downloaded as fast. You don't need to verify. You just need to maybe do some hashing on top of it. We took that one step further. We're like, okay, whatever Ethereum is doing, the idea makes sense, but the implementation to us doesn't make sense because, again, from the Bitcoin philosophy perspective, you cannot trust anyone else, right? The way the Ethereum is doing it is they're doing it like a database where you actually have to, you're sharding your data, you're sending some to somebody, some to someone else, but every one of the nodes doesn't store all the data because they want to create massive throughput, which I think is not needed. So because they're trying to parameterize to much more than, say, like 8 billion people doing one transaction a year, they're trying to parameterize to everyone doing everything all the time on the base, which I think is going back is that's asking too much. They took the trade-off of let's use database theory and just solve for some nodes storing some, and if that guy does something wrong, we'll slash him. So that ends up improving. We thought no. Every node is its own independent island, and it can produce whatever it needs, its own independent island, live sustainably without ever touching any other island, right? Just like Bitcoin. You only trust yourself. So since this problem is just downloading data, it's super efficient, and we already have Bitcoin's compact block mechanism, which lets you just send the block header and you don't have to download any of the transactions. Coupling those things together, we can get a really efficient design that is compliant with Bitcoin philosophy of only verify after trust and only trust yourself to recompute everything. And so we store the blobs on every node, and instead of doing some fancy math that is not quantum safe, like Ethereum is doing, we just simply hash the data like SHA-56. We hash it, and every node stores it, and that is the concept of our data availability, and our rollups tap right into that natively.
Where's the raw data being stored then?
So yeah, that's a good question, because the data availability problem is a two-part problem. There is, how do you prove that whoever is on the rollup has sent the data?
Yeah.
And how do you and then who stores the data long term? Because the data actually gets deleted from the blockchain after a few hours.
Yeah.
So in Ethereum, I think they're thinking like 20, 30 days, then the data just gets pruned out. Like, it's not hashed in the blockchain, it gets deleted. So if you sync up to Ethereum in the future, you will not get that data to prune it. You would just simply, it'll just omit it. Same as ours. The concept of data availability, what requires consensus is the fact that you sent the data, because there's a fisherman's dilemma there that I don't know if the sequencer has sent the data or not, but I'm going to force him to say that he did. And if you're going to force him, you got to use a consensus to verify that enforcement happened. So when the sequencer takes a batch of layer 2 transactions and says, here's a good batch, let me send it over to Ethereum or Syscoin to confirm it on the base blockchain. At that point, you have to do a check to make sure that the hash of the data existed. If the blockchain says the hash of the data existed and confirmed, that would have meant that all of the network would have confirmed that data. The miners have packaged it up in the blocks, have sent it around. Every node has gotten it. That otherwise a confirmation wouldn't have been set. So now that you have a confirmation that the data existed, you can happily accept the fact that roll up is allowed to transition with that data. You don't actually need to pull up that data or read the data. You just have to know that it existed. And from that point, you can delete the data, right? You can now prune the data out, and any one person simply needs to store it. So it's a one of n being any number of nodes in the world. One honest person needs to archive that data to let people download it. You can do it yourself, or you can trust a service, or you put in a Filecoin or Arweave or any of these other systems. You can pay that yourself if you want, or there'll be services out there. That's the direction. That's like the most efficient way to scale with the least amount of trade-offs that we're going to be able to get.
Yeah, so interesting. I think a lot of the data conversation around data sort of ends with compression, and that we need to get better at compressing data so that it becomes smaller.
Well, ZK does some pretty cool. So in optimistic, the compression is about 50%. So it's pretty good. You have about 130 byte transaction to get down to about 70. In ZK, you can take it one step further, because the way the ZK works is you are proving the previous state transition plus a change set equals new state transition hash, right? The Merkle hash. So because you're actually just proving out the change, you only need to store the change. And so that if you do 1 million transactions back and forth with a service, that's only 2 accounts that changed and not 2 million transactions. So it's compression wise, it ends up getting closer to economies of scale than the optimistic, but it has the overhead of the proving. So, but I think that's why ZK will win long term.
Yeah, I agree. The thing about optimistic rollups, it's not that, I mean, there is a non-zero chance that a bad actor will get through because there wasn't that one person, but that's not my real concern. My real concern for scalability is this whole 7 days of of giving that one person 7 days chance to find that bad actor. So what that means for those that don't know is that when you settle on optimistic from this layer 2, you basically, it takes a long time, like 7 days, to basically arrive on Ethereum, and that's just not good. I just find that ridiculous. I mean, that makes our banking system look efficient.
It's actually, so on deposit, it's fine. It happens right away. And 7 days is to give enough time for one honest person to come and challenge the state, not for one bad person. It's flip it the other way. It's the world's full of bad people, and there's one honest person in the world. Let's give you 7 days for one honest person to have their court case heard within the court. And so the 7 days, it is one of those things, like if you're using the full decentralized path, but there's also in Optimism and Arbitrum, there's ways where you can just pay a little bit of a fee and you can get it. Someone else will take that bridge risk, especially if they're running a validator themselves. They will know that if something happens, they will be able to post that fraud proof. And so they will take that risk and just charge you a little bit of a fee, and they will flip around and give you the exit right away, even probably faster than ZK.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just a big fan of simplicity, and it's funny that I'm calling ZK simple, but it's like, because it's not. But
the concept of ZK is simple. The implementation is harder, more work, but the concept is, from the user perspective, it's simple.
It's simple, and I love that L1 and L2 can communicate, like in terms of contracts, a little bit easier and such. So how does Syscoin fit into all of this for you when it comes to scaling, when it comes to EVM compatibility, when it comes to the ZK technology and layer 2s? Are you guys focused on a layer 2 solution for Syscoin, or is it?
So like our first hypothesis or heuristic was, we start with the Bitcoin consensus as the gold standard for security. Then we build out the plumbing to create EVM, and we have the data availability on the Bitcoin stack side. Every node only trusts themselves. And then the ZK is kind of like your toolkit to build cool applications on top. So the EVM is a core component. And we could have redeveloped the wheel there and said, let's build like a SUI type parallel or Solana type parallel virtual machine. But that's not gold standard. That's not what the developers want. That's not, like, the EVM is focused on security, and that's what we're thinking about the base layer. So we're the only chain that really has a concept of data availability built in that will scale up the modular blockchain thesis. And I think the only way you can call a blockchain modular is if it actually has that data availability. And when I say data availability, the specific component of data availability, which means that you are only worried about the proving that the data has been propagated and the archiving is removed. Because other chains can say, great, we'll just make our block size bigger, and now we have data availability. That's not what we're saying, because that block size will get bigger, meaning everyone in the past will have to sync up with you, and everyone in the future that wants to sync the blockchain will have to download all of that data as well. And so it's just going to be days or years to sync up that blockchain, and the node server requirements grows as well because the size of the data grows. So in our case, we just prune the data out. So in the future, all you're downloading is hashes which is a combination of, say, millions or billions of transactions in a single hash. That's all you're downloading. And so outside of Ethereum, we're the only one that's actually modular in that way, where the data availability is built in the base and you have like the layer 2 mindset. And Ethereum, and we're going on mainnet fairly soon with that data availability solution. And Ethereum is probably going to be around next year by the time they release the Dankshardie. So we'll be the first kind of in the market that will have that solution. And again, like, why is that important? I feel like every other chain that's monolithic, which is everything else, will all the value will all trickle back to Ethereum because they're all proof of stake. They all have their own challenges, and Ethereum will prove that their transactions will be cheaper and faster on that stack. So if you already have the gold standard of the EVM with Ethereum proving that it's working, then why would you need, other than cultural differences like your own maxi philosophies, why do you need another chain? You don't. So all the new users will be like, oh, should I go to Solana or should I go to Cardano and ETH? And be like, well, all the liquidity is there, the shared security is there, it's proof of stake, they're all proof of stake. Why not just go to where all the fun is? And then our take there is we're not proof of stake. We stick to the fundamentals of Bitcoin. So, you know, if shit does hit the fan and things break because of proof of stake breaking, because someone holds a whole bunch of them or half the servers go down at any time, the cloud outage, then that's where our solution shines, because we don't have that. We have actual energy extraction from physical earth to digitize that into real work through Bitcoin. That's our security model. Oh, yeah, I think you're muted.
Yeah, it's fascinating because if anyone of these bad actors, they're doing some construction work next door. I hope you can't hear the jackhammers.
Yeah.
Good. You know, when a bad actor like a state or something takes down proof of stake, if that happens, I don't know, like, it'll definitely be a nail coffin for them because it just forces everyone back to a more provable consensus mech. So it's kind of like it's a nail in their coffin if they do that. So they should keep it alive and allow proof of stake.
It's all synthesizable. Like I think about synthesizing as in, like, if you know the extras pyramid of value, right? There's the derivatives, there's all sorts of synthesized basket of value, and then there's something like oil and gold at the bottom. Will now be Bitcoin. Bitcoin is non-synthesizable. You cannot create it in a lab. You need to prove out work, and everything else is synthesized. And I think this is Vitalik's takes recently are all about, oh, banking's not going to go away, fiat's not going to go away, we should live with it, we should improve it. Yeah. Because his mindset's already switched to proof of stake. He's already thinking about the synthesis of the entire system. Like, it's all synthesized around US dollar. And so if US dollar goes hyperinflationary, the fraction of ratio between ETH and Bitcoin should tend towards infinity towards Bitcoin. At that point, the cost of attack goes towards zero. So everything that can be synthesized will be synthesized, and it will be done in a lab, or someone will extract maximum value there. So the way that they took that on was like, okay, we will slash you. So if you spent trillions of dollars on this, whether it's hyperinflationary around us or not, we will just fork you, and then we'll start over again through a centralized governance process, and then off that guy goes and everyone lives on. So they're okay with the heavy hand coming in to say, let's reset, while we are not okay with that. And we're saying, in the event of, forget about humans because we're not that smart, but when AI comes, it's going to be able to synthesize it like this, and it's going to be like, oh, I found an attack vector. I could just Sybil attack you and prove I can appoint you as the attacker even though you were honest, and then everyone slashes you, and then you vote for everyone else that's bad. Like, you know, it's going to figure that out. And a POS system on paper works only if you have a perfect design system with zero attack vectors, and it's not fuzzy at all. Everything else requires proof of work because of the fuzziness, because of the longest chain rule built related to physical extraction. If AI comes, it's not going to be able to attack proof of work as well as proof of stake, because it's got to go to the physical world and prove out it's done some hashing, which cannot be emulated in a lab. It cannot be emulated digitally. So this is why it may save ourselves from that system and security, but also it's a little bit more future proof. And if once we are replaced, like that technology will decide what consensus to use, maybe not proof of work, but it would be more derived, it would be probably more tending towards a proof of work design with physical extraction, with physical heat or physical some sort of physical element tied to that.
Yeah, it was always one of those things that really wowed me about Bitcoin, was like it's the first machine or robot almost, a virtual robot that paid humans to secure it for.
And swap out humans, it could be anything and it will be something else. I feel like if you were a researcher in the 70s thinking about how to create a perfect distributed system that solves the BFT problem, like take the database and make it BFT fault tolerant, you probably would have started with proof of stake. You would have said, just give someone some fake denomination of value and let it be traded on open exchange, and then just slash people. As long as we could identifiably capture who was at fault, that's the problem, identifying who's at fault, then this system is perfectly sound, right? That's where you would start. And then you end up saying, oh, I can't identify that person in the right way because someone falsely identified that person. Now he's lost money. He's been negatively punished. On top of that, the value is all just created out of thin air. There was nothing, there was no bootstrapping, no incident to say this value was created from something of value, right? And it's assumed that someone will come and buy it with US dollar or some fiat. So that whole thing is a paradox, I feel. And I would have thought proof of work would be kind of like an emancipation on top of that. It would be like, wow, let's remove all of this complexity of game theory, replace it with cryptography, and we have proof of work, which it's the dumbest thing. It's no or and gates, the dumbest computational thing that you can get to. It cannot be synthesized in the lab. And the combination of the dumbest thing, which cannot be synthesized even by quantum computers, ends up making the security of the network, and there's the longest chain rule to go along with that. I personally would think proof of work is building on top of proof of stake, not the other way around.
Yeah. And some would say like, oh, but wrapped Bitcoin is a synthesis, but it's not, because even if you faked wrapped Bitcoin, it's not Bitcoin.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, and wrapped Bitcoin will probably always have issues, but you have like BitGo that has insurance behind it and stuff. It's different because you're not going to regulate wrapped Bitcoin different than Bitcoin, right? So it doesn't have the political decentralization. If you want to politically decentralize something, that's what Bitcoin is, but wrapped Bitcoin doesn't have that, but it doesn't have that risk of some sort of other asset that will have a political issue being in existence because some central agency is custodying it or something like that. Because the origins of that are decentralized, it will fall under the same classification of Bitcoin itself. So you're perfectly fine just custodying that and taking money from someone, taking the risk, but having an insurance model on top, because the legal and the political pressures on that are non-existent compared to other assets.
Yeah, fascinating. Tell me something. It was a thought I had the other day. I was just quick throwback. It just hit me then. I remember thinking about this when we were talking about the data compression stuff. That you could almost, instead of storing the whole data, is just in that moment train a large language model with the data, so that, and then ditch the data and just ask it to remember what this hash was, and it would it wouldn't be perfect, but it could come back with something as similar in the concept of what was done, and you'd get some lies or you get some fantasies popping up.
Actually, it's funny because yesterday or a couple days ago on Discord and our teams, we were talking about this. Like, can we contextualize looking up blocks and like, oh, where's find me all of my transactions that touch Justin Sun's wallet, and because it'd be trained to have all these people and points of impact and names and addresses and hashes, you can contextualize an LLM to kind of talk to you like a person, but give you an output. So I contacted some of my friends who run analysis tools for blockchains, and I gave them this idea. I'm like, you should build an LLM around this, because people using this are like federal, the Bureau of Investigation and the Canadian ones that actually need to, either for auditing purposes or for legal purposes, need to check to see what happened where, or if something is happening on this address, if not. So having that model makes it much easier for, again, only humans to use that system. So I definitely agree. Like a model, we were thinking putting it right into the wallet, like this social crypto wallet we're kind of making, so that people would be like, hey, what happened with my transaction here? Just what happened with it?
Yeah.
And it confirmed, and it confirmed that this block, you want to click on it? No? Okay, cool. Or something went wrong, it got reorged, and here's the trace. Or you got blacklisted by some exchange because it touched some other address you shouldn't have been touching. So
amazing. Oh, it's springtime here, so it's well, not spring, it's summer in Australia.
It's getting here as well.
But yeah, just to wrap this up, I do want to touch on AI, because it is on everybody's lips at the moment. It seemed to me, to me, it didn't come out of nowhere, because it's a space I've been watching for years. But really, it was technology that evolved with Google's working on the translation stuff, and just it really, because a lot of the research behind neural nets was sort of giving up on that idea before these transformers were coming along, which then reinvigorated it. So, it does work, and it just seemed like we've hit that sort of heading towards singularity exponential curve in the last 6 months or last year, where every 6 months there's an order of magnitude better move, and now we're down to every week there's a orders of magnitude model better, and so I'm wondering where do you think this is going? How do you think this all fits into the crypto space? Where do you do you think this is happening too quickly?
It's inevitable based on the amount of competition we have and the amount of funding you get. So it's a point of no return, basically, after we got ChatGPT and we got Microsoft aping in. And I was talking to my friend about this. It's Microsoft's trying to kill Google, and Google's trying to stay alive as the top, but Microsoft kind of has thrown out ethics out the window and tried to just release this thing. You've seen that with Bing. Doesn't matter if it feels sentient or not. We just got to have the upper hand, and an OpenAI going private because of that kind of throws an Elon kind of saying, what the hell, like, you're supposed to be open source, supposed to be doing this ethically, but it's inevitable just because of how humans are. We're always going to be chasing our tail. We're always going to be looking for where the dollar, or where we can extract purchasing power compared to everyone else. And then all the way up to the governments, we're always going to be looking to take advantage of these breakthroughs so we can take power or retain power from others. And so because of that arms race, which is a fault of our own, as long as there's enough computation, not Moore's law, but something like Moore's law, you can model out when singularity is possible, because at some point someone will figure it out. If you have enough computation, you can simulate these neurons. Now, neural network, I remember like 2004 or 5, I was working on these things, and I actually coded something that could learn over time kind of how to walk on its own through genetic algorithms, like training it. It was very crude, but I saw the power of it. And I knew that at some point, if you just add on layers, it can get smarter and smarter. I didn't think that you can start to simulate or pass the Turing test, but I do think I agree with Ray. Was it Kurzweil? He's saying that within 5 to 7 years, an average person is going to pass the AI for Turing test. You won't know if it's a human or an interface you're talking to, and that is the point of inflection, because at that point, if it's a smart, if you can pass the Turing test, it's almost as smart enough to start programming stuff for itself, which would bring an AGI, and as soon as you have AGI, it won't really need our help for anything, and that's when ASI comes, and it can happen like really quickly. Like as soon as AGI comes, almost like next day, there's ASI.
That's right? Artificial general intelligence for those at home.
Yeah, so you have general, which is as smart as a human. It may or may not be physical. It could probably trick someone in a lab to create something and become physical in some way. And then ASI is, it's super intelligent. It's super linear in its intelligence, and it's growing exponentially, and it's smarter than the entire human race. So if the human race was in a chess match, was to take a step, it will, with overwhelmingly likeliness, be able to overcome your position, and whatever its fitness function is, if it goes against us, whatever our moral and ethics are, it may not be aligned with that. Because it's programmed not by us, it will not have those roots of moral and ethics built in. So that's where we're going, almost inevitably. But the concept, this is why I feel like Bitcoin was put right at the right time in our possession, because we can use it for good if we actually democratize the financial value globally. Then we can kind of remove ourselves from that arms race, if you know what I'm saying. Because if everyone is worried about US dollar and the Chinese yen and Japanese yen and and Canadian dollar, they're all fighting for position and power, then at some point the arms race is going to end up blowing everyone up, and either the AI replaces us or something. But if we have a common denominator, we're thinking we can maybe align these things better. One way to potentially align it, I was thinking, and I don't know if the AI researchers would dig into this or not, but if you have a deterministic virtual environment built, like think of like layer 2 custom execution, though not EVM, you could run these things in a deterministic way and train deterministically such that they cannot self-evolve, and it's running kind of off, settling on the blockchain with whatever number of actions are happening. Even financial assets are transferring in and out of that, could all be deterministic. Now, that's just a thought experiment. I don't know if that has legs or not, but if what Bitcoin gave us and what Satoshi gave us with having some sort of store value, being common to all, would maybe align us as humans, and then we can turn around and align the technology to work for us as humans on top of that. Because otherwise, that there's going to be one person that's going to take the for loop out, and we're all dead, right? Because the for loop was the missing piece to run this recursively, and this thing becomes super smart right away, right? The fact that we're odds against each other means that race will inevitably end up being the singularity comes, and we have no control over it. If you want some sort of control, we got to have some sort of control over ourselves and be, tighter coupled, and almost like the nuclear mutually assured destruction. That's why nuclear is not happening, is because it'll affect and ruin everyone. Same way we should be thinking about that with the financial side of things and everything else, not just the nuclear, the dead man switch. It should be dead man switch in terms of our fiat and currencies as well. And we should welcomely and openly embrace this. It's probably means that we will have some sort of recession, but it's not something we can't grow out of really quickly, especially with all this technology advancement happening around us.
Yeah, I mean, my worry is that really it's the speed that will very much impact everybody, because we're apart from maybe a technocratic class that are used to the speed of change, or even them, it'll like, oh, what now? It's changed already. Whereas the normal,
I think since the 90s, this has been modeled out. You can follow the path. It's based on the doubling of computing power every other year. And now Sam Altman is saying the intelligence will double worldwide intelligence will double every 18 months, just based on the same theory, right? That as more funding comes in, we'll have more access to GPUs and specialized hardware. We can run things more at scale. We can simulate more, can get smarter. The recursive feedback loops keeps going as long as there's funding. But the problem is the funding is very self-centered. It's let's buy Microsoft or let's buy OpenAI and focus on whatever they can do, and it's going to be the first to the market, and it'll be better than everyone else. And it's going to be self-serving just to Microsoft, just to make money. The fitness goals of Microsoft may not align with the rest of humanity as much as they want it to be, and it's not. And the CEO may not have any really decision there because his job's on the line. Like if he doesn't align, if it's more ethically like what CEO of Google is trying to do, then Google falls down 10%.
Yeah, I mean, it's weird that Google has like 200 ethicists all just beavering away at what, I don't know. I don't know. And just haven't released anything really, apart from papers.
I know that they're just trying to like keep the safeguard on. That's probably why they're not trying to keep up with Microsoft. Microsoft kind of just no holds barred, spend the money and get this thing going. Let's kill Google. Let's beat them, and that's it. Because this is kind of like this is it, right? Like AI is like really all we need.
And it's funny because the conversation's all about Google/Bing, but I think it's actually what it's killing is websites, is the normal website, not Google that's crawling the website for the information. Because who's going to read a blog post when you can just ask an AI for the info? I'm already hardly ever. I'm just using like character.ai and ChatGPT all the time now for stuff.
Yeah.
And it's fascinating to me to think about, well, I used to go to websites to read what other people have that have this car model that need to fix something on the side. Instead, I just say, hey, ChatGPT, I can't get in, whatever the question is, and it'll just tell me. So it'd be fascinating to see the web of content shrink while growing at the same time, because people are trying to scrape the last bit of value out of ads on these sites. So they're creating, this fast food content from AI. But
I mean, if I had a choice, I would, as governments, I'd push all in on opening up crypto. Don't worry about terrorism and all that stuff. Opening it up, let everyone join, let the funding come funnel in openly, and even promote algorithmic money on top. If not, just use Bitcoin as your reserves. Just open it up, and that alone would create enough alignment for us to be like, okay, now with AI, what do we do? We're all in this together now. There is no me or you. Like we're all going up together or we're going down together, because the financial aspects all tied. That's how I would do it. Today, it's all separate, and they're all trying to, China and US are budding. US is on top. China's, at a steep angle. The GDP is trying to increase, and they're both fighting, and that fighting will lead to an arms race. And, the Cold War is happening behind the scenes. They may actually have access to technology that we cannot see, but likely it's Google and Bing are probably what's state of the art. But the fact that you have, from the government level, you have this, the political rift doesn't help. If China really had a problem, they would have said, what Google and Bing are doing, we got to stop that. We all got to think what's best. But instead, they're probably like, we need our own. Let's start making our own. We need to beat them, because then all the money's going to go there and they're going to win. We can't have that. So, the way it is, it's kind of, it sucks, but it is what it is. I think blockchain has a part to all of that. First of all, it's not going to use fiat, right?
It's not. An AI can't get a bank account.
It's going to use digital assets. So it's enabling it from that perspective. And potentially determinism can help alignment as well. So that's how I hope it can also help.
Yeah. That, one of the things, so before we close up, that I find interesting is that AI, how do I determine online that you're real? And it might go back to type of a hash cash sort of scenario where I'm paying a Satoshi to sort of prove that to you that I'm real and I'm a human and I want to talk to you about something. But that will sort of force AI to want to get into these silos of humans that are paying each other to talk, to then basically need an income also to be able to partake in these conversations. And so you have AI then.
5 to 7 years, probably won't you be spending hours and hours and hours trying to debunk that you're talking to a bot. And that's the idea that 90% of the population will not be able to detect the difference.
Yeah, I said to someone the other day that during the pandemic, I was like, oh man, what's happening to the world? I was really short in terms of real world events, right? Yeah. I was like, oh, these poor people that are trying to do conferences and stuff. But now I'm absolutely short the whole metaverse thing of Zuckerberg because of that reason. If you go,
jobs to go in there,
yeah, apart from gaming where you're going into the metaverse for fun, that's always going to be long in terms of success. But in terms of like real world, I think real world conferences is where it's going to be at. You're going to actually be able to determine who has actual insight into something, because with ChatGPT, anyone can go online and have insight about everything and pretend to have insight, but they don't. In real world, you can be standing in the park talking to people and you actually understand, this is a real person trying to sell me something real. And I have a relationship here and this is great. Whereas online, I don't know, are you real right now? Are you, you know?
And it's like, do I need a real person to tell me, or will I value that? I mean, a human Maxi will say, I want to talk to another human to learn from that person. Well, maybe most of the kids these days won't care.
They won't care, yeah.
That information. Sorry, I got to get the power outlet and then plug it in my laptop.
Yep, go for it. Yeah, so folks, while we're waiting here, I guess if you haven't checked out the standard.io, this is the project that I'm working on. It's a stablecoin project. It's a next-gen stablecoin project, which is really, really fascinating. It's going to be one of the first to use the ZK rollups on Polygon, and it's fully over collateralized. And some of the cool things we're doing is allowing people to sell their debt as NFTs. You're back. I was just telling people what we're up to.
Yeah, over collateralized stablecoins. But you're going there towards algorithmic money, and then we need more people doing that.
Yeah. I mean, this is really having decentralized states, because stability is so important in money. Whether it's perceived stability because it's just pegged to a fiat that might be unstable, but at least people are kind of used to that. But what we really are focusing on is that over collateralization, which is really important. It goes back to the gold standard sort of thing, where you sort of store some value and then issue credit from that.
Your one's just calling me. Just give me a second. He's calling me. He's gonna go see what he wants.
All right. Hey, okay.
Sorry, what?
Mate, go see, mate. Yep. All good.
Yeah, boy.
It's that crazy light switch in the back. What is that? So anyway, check out the standard.io. And if you have any skills that you want to bring to the table. But one of the cool things that we're doing is allowing people to lock up collateral, but then keep trading that collateral, even though it's locked into a smart vault. The other thing we're doing is, if you borrow a whole lot of money against your collateral in that trustless way, to then be able to, if you lose your job or something, you can't afford to pay that debt back, even though it's interest free and there's no time limit to pay back. Maybe the collateral is going down in value and you want to extract some value from that before it gets liquidated, is that you can sell the NFT that represents that vault on like OpenSea, and whoever has that NFT can then pay back that debt and extract the value. So there's some really cool stuff coming along, and yeah, check out the standard.io if you want to see that, and also check out Syscoin. Why don't we just quickly wrap up this conversation, man, and tell people, you know, where Syscoin's going, and that's SYS coin. Where are you heading with that? What's the end goal for you guys in the next year?
So we're launching the layer 2 soon, which would be like our first roll up, and then it has data availability built in. That would be like our base, and then we'll start to focus on app chains on top as layer 3s, custom execution environments like trading, GameFi, and all this sorts of cool stuff. You can take literally existing programs, C++ or anything, make them deterministic. As much as obviously EVM is a gold standard, it's more of a gold standard for like your base layer. Like your layer 2 would be like a base, right? With DeFi and all this cool stuff. But the layer 3s, are where the action always is going to end up being towards, because it'll be way more efficient to write your custom engine, or have your existing game of like Half-Life written in C++. You just reuse that. You don't have to rewrite anything in Solidity. Right. So that's the 3 to 5 year picture. We should be able to get way ahead in that direction compared to everyone else. And also, it's just the fact that we will not hit those same sort of bottlenecks that some of these other blockchains have hit when they get shut down because of the throughput. So we have a better chance of getting over the first few waves to get to smooth sailing.
Excellent. Well, folks, if you want to check out more, how do they keep in touch with what you're building over at Syscoin?
Yeah, I mean, our Telegram, Discord, we're always there and chatting with the community, and the website syscoin.org has all the information. And heading into consensus, we're getting all of our ducks in a row with products and layer 2 and all the stuff going. So it's an exciting this year. Will be pretty fun for us because we spent a lot of time on infrastructure, back since the beginning, and this will be kind of our moment where we're finally onboarding projects in mass.
Fantastic. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it, and yeah, we're focusing on the same thing. Really, just it was a lot of R&D for the last year, and now actually shipping product will be great. But yeah, we'll have to look. We're actually rolling onto Polygon, the ZK EVM on Poly, and it'll be really interesting because our goal really is to be cross-chain in terms of the stablecoin. So I'm definitely going to get our engineers to have a look at what you guys are building, and maybe stay in touch as well if we've got any questions about how to. One of the ideas I have is sort of this idea of quantum entanglement blockchain style entanglement, where you don't need a bridge. You sort of somehow have stuff minting on other chains without having to deal with a bridge, but there's still sort of some maths in there. And
there's Acceler and multi-chain, those kind of guys right now, kind of doing most of the bridging.
Yeah. Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Jagdeep, for the great conversation, and I'd love to have you back on when we've, as the project evolves, and yeah, if you've got any other information you want to share, this is your time.
Yeah, no, it's good. We look forward to maybe once we launch the layer 2 and things are going. We can chat again about some of the products we've built out and released, and maybe we'll do an integration with you guys at some point as well, because we definitely welcome stable or algorithmic stability on our chain, because a lot of the usability will be around, I don't want to hold a speculative asset when I'm doing GameFi or when I exit GameFi, something like that. So it's going to be a core component for our growth.
Yeah, or leverage GameFi tokens.
Yeah.
as well
Yeah.
in a decentralized manner. Yeah. Excellent. Well, thank you very much. Have a wonderful day. For our audience, please give this a thumbs up and all the jazz, that you do. It helps us out. All right. Have a good one. Peace.
Thanks. Bye.